be coming through. I'll just check. Good to go. Hi everyone, thanks for joining in today. I'm really excited to have Racheal Johns back again. She's been a great supporter of our group, so good to have you back again, Racheal.
Thanks so much for having me.
For those who don't know, Racheal is an English teacher by trade, a mum 24/7 and a chronic arachnophobic, and a writer the rest of the time. She rarely sleeps and never irons, a lover of romance and women's fiction. Racheal loves nothing more than sitting in bed with her laptop and electric banker and imagining her stories. So her latest book, for those who don't know, is Outback Secrets. Hopefully I can share my copy there. And just want to mention as well that thanks to HarperCollins, that people watching today, if you type a comment, a question for Racheal, you'll have a chance to win a copy of Outback Secrets.
Awesome.
So thanks, Racheal, so much for joining us. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling everyone a little bit about Outback Secrets.
Sure, I'm terrible at the one sentence pitch, but I'll give the best shot at describing it in a succinct manner. So Outback Secrets is the 5th in my Bunyip Bay trilogy. Go figure that out. I'm not good at maths. But it can be read completely as a standalone, so I'll just say that because I never planned on writing it when I was writing the first 3 books that are loosely linked. So this is sort of a return to Bunyip Bay. You do get a glimpse of old characters, but it's completely new main characters and a story. So the main characters are Henry and Liam. Liam is the publican in Bunyip Bay, and I always love writing about country pubs. I've done it once before. But I realised that I'd written about Liam in all the books. He appears in all the books because lots of the other characters go to the pub, but he has never had his own story. So when people wanted more and more, I decided I had to give Liam his story. So Liam has a bit of a secret in his past that has made him kind of a little bit of a hermit, but he's in a good spot because he's part of the community, but he's also a little bit standoffish. So he knows everyone else's secrets, but nobody knows his secret. And then Henry is Henrietta, short for Henrietta. She's an ag pilot who's coming back to Bunyip Bay for Christmas, but she comes back a little bit early because she has a little bit of a scare in the air. And I didn't mean that to rhyme. and she's not really confident flying, and she's a bit worried about, what she's going to do next if she can't fly, because that's completely who she is. She's also a bit hesitant about coming back to Bunyip Bay for so long because her mum is desperate for her to give up flying and, get a sensible job, hopefully settle down and have some kids. So they're the 2 main characters. And when Henry comes back, a few things happen and she ends up having a pretend relationship with Liam. And of course, as all pretend relationships in fiction end up, it becomes more real than pretend. So hope that's kind of a good example.
Yeah, and I want to say as well, because a lot of people do, I know you did say this, but I want to stress that you can read it without reading the others. I've read the first and second. I was planning to read the others, but time to, so I just
you're amazing. You must read so much. Reading backlist is very hard when you're trying to read
read the new ones coming, that's right. So I read Outback Secrets without reading them all in order, and that was totally fine and really loved it. And I have to I have only read 3 in the series, but I have to say that I feel that they've got better and better as I've read them.
That's lovely to know. I don't know if I should tell secrets. I'm too much of an open book, but when I wrote Outback Dreams, it was very much, I thought, it was, I think, my 3rd book, and I just felt it was very much manufactured, long story why, and I felt, oh my gosh, this is a terrible book. Everyone's going to, so I didn't love it, but it amazed me how so many people fell in love with Monty and Faith. And then I did enjoy writing Outback Blaze, which is the next one. But that was written very, very fast because of a deadline mix up. So, you're always a bit worried about that too. So, but saying that, this one was a problem child. Outback Secrets. In fact, a friend I was talking to today, what did she called it? Oh my gosh, I've forgotten now. I was like, I'm going to use that from now on. It was something like much better than the books that almost killed me. It was much better. And that's definitely what this one was. So to hear the feedback so far on this book, and the reviews have been fabulous, and people like you have said that they really love reading it, even if they haven't read the other books. So people who have read the other books have also, like you said, it's become a favourite. That just amazes me. So, phew.
And I'm sure everyone will be asking this: are there any more, or will there be more?
Well, never say never, because as I told you, it was going to be a 3-book series when I started it, years and years ago. And because people have fallen, surprisingly to me, as much as I think anyone, people fell in love with this little community of Bunyip Bay that I created, and the series. I did start writing it because I'd written 2 standalone rural romance novels at that stage, but I read a lot of contemporary romance from America, so a lot of small town westerns and things like that. And I knew how much people loved series, so I decided I wanted to write a series. But I'm not much of a planner in anything, so 3 books was as far as I kind of thought ahead. And then we've got 5 now. So I did, as I was writing this book, think, maybe, I don't know if I ever want to say it's definitely the end. I've got things I need to write next before I go back. But I sort of seeded, because I'm a terrible, terrible planner, as I've said. I'm actually wearing a top that I got that says making it up as I go.
Yeah.
Because that is me. I make everything up just as I go, and I hope for the best and pray that it'll work out. And I seeded a couple of characters. I don't even know if they all made it through the final cut and edit, but I seeded a few sort of random people in there without saying much about them at all, with the potential to possibly. So there was, I can't remember his name is now, but ex-AFL player. Put him in there. There's a pastor at the local church. Well,
saying that, actually, Cal said number 6 could be Outback Pastor.
Outback Pastor. I don't know if I'd get away with that title because it seems, like my publishers and other publishers too friends I've talked to and stuff, often, you want to have a title that doesn't, unless you're writing inspirational romance, you don't want a title that sort of lends itself towards that. And my books are definitely not inspirational romance. Not that I've got anything against those novels, but, you don't want to. But, any ideas for titles, please chuck them in the comments. Let us know because, never say never. I just wish I had more time. I wish I could write faster. I used to seem to write a lot faster than I do now.
You still, though, are amazing how many books you write.
Oh, I think I'm slowing down now a bit.
Sarah Joy says, is Bunyip Bay based on a real place? So I think that's what a lot of people...
Yes, actually, it is. Yeah. All of my rural romances are based in fictional towns that I've created because I don't want someone in a real place to say, hey, he doesn't own the pub, or, there's not only one pub in that town, there's 4, and just other things like that. So I like creating a fictional town because it means that I can completely play God and decide who is where and what the town has according to my needs. But I do like sort of grounding it, in a real place. In my head, I know sort of where it's based on, but I take what I like from that place and I add whatever else I need. But I always sort of refer to nearby towns so people can kind of guess where it is. So Bunyip Bay is based on Dongara in Western Australia. Now, as I said, it doesn't mean I haven't been to Dongara for 6 years or so. It's not necessarily, it doesn't look like that in the town or anything, but it's more sort of the location and the vibe and the mood of the town, and the fact that it was on, when I first decided to write Outback Dreams, I'd written 2 rurals. Who knew how many I would write after that? But I was sort of looking to do something a little bit different, and I thought I'd have a rural community still, but I also thought I liked the idea of coastal community as well. So I thought to blend the best of both worlds, and that's to me what sort of Dongara and a lot of the coastal towns up the north of WA do, because there's still farming land on one side, but you've got the beautiful ocean on the other. And I did actually in early books think maybe I would have a hero or heroine who is a cray fisherman, because there's a lot of that sort of stuff going along on the side too. So there's an option there as well. I never did that.
Lots of potential for more.
Yeah, definitely.
And what about the characters? Are they some traits from people that you may know or may have met, or?
Not really. I think probably or subconsciously, that's probably the word I should use. I remember a few years ago, I was at the Romance Writers Conference of Australia, and Graham Simpson, who wrote The Rosie Project and a lot of other books, he was speaking, and he talked about character, and he said all his characters are a third himself, a third people he knows, and a third his imagination. And that really resonated with me. I think that's very, very true for most writers. You take little bits of yourself, it's automatically going to go in there. And often I think it's maybe things you would like to do, or how you would like to be. That's the good thing about being a writer. You can live vicariously through your characters. They're good parts, because you don't want to experience the bad parts, but you have to. I've done careers and stuff that I know I'll probably never get a chance to be in real life, or I don't have the skills for, but you can sort of live through them and experience that in a little way. And so I think all my characters have a little bit of me, probably some more than others, but I definitely don't, think about that. And same with people I know, because, every interaction a writer has, every conversation, every person they know, it's all stored sort of, nothing is sacred. And so, there's things I can pinpoint, like in my very first rural romance, Jilted, the heroine, Ellie, is a big Fanta fan, and I did that as a bit of a joke for one of my friends from school who used to drink Fanta, and we swear she got drunk on Fanta. And then in Mandrout, there's an old guy called Charlie who he sits in his room, front room, with a tea towel on his head, and that was taken directly from my granddad in his last years of his life. We had no idea why he would do this, but it was just kind of amusing. So, little things like that I use, but I don't directly sort of take anyone I know and put them in a book.
And you have written a lot of books. How do you keep up with the character names?
Oh, that's really hard, actually. When I decided to write, so there's two parts probably to that question. When I decided to write this book, I had to reread Outback Dreams, Outback Blaze, Outback Ghosts, and Outback Sisters, which felt quite weird to me. Some writers read their books afterwards, but I don't. I've never done that. I might sort of, occasionally I might just like open a book into a random page and read something to try and remind myself that, you've done this before, maybe you can do it again. But I had to read them all, because I'd forgotten, so many things, not specifically the names in this character, but like mannerisms that they had, certain things that had happened in town, or how old they were, and all that kind of stuff, because I'm not sensible, and I don't do things like keep an Excel spreadsheet of all my characters and, their names and stuff. So it's funny because, you try and not use the same name again. But I think the more books you write, there's been a couple of minor characters and stuff that have probably had similar names. I don't think I've got the same name. I think I've managed not to have any main characters double up. But I know I've used Charlie, I think, 2 times. So Charlie was the main character, sub-character, sort of like secondary character, the old guy in Mandrout. And Charlie was one of the main characters, the sister in the Patterson Girls. And then a few years ago, I realised I was going to name a dog Charlie as well. And I wrote half the book as Charlie. And then I thought, geez, I've got a thing with Charlie. So I've had a male Charlie and a female Charlie. It's hard. I've had a Daniel, I think, with Daniel Monty Montgomery. And I'm trying to think now. I swear I was going to have an actual Daniel. I can't even think where that was. Anyway, it does get confusing.
Yeah. And what about like your children's names and that? Do you steer clear of them, or are they in your books as well?
Well, it's funny. I had lots of girls' names, and I have 3 boys, so I've used all the girls' names that I kind of wanted to use as characters. I have actually put. So in Talk of the Town, there's an elderly man called Archie. And my son actually told me, he's my youngest, called Archie, and he told me when I was writing that, you need to write an old man called I can't remember exactly, but I wrote that that character in for him, because I'm very much an organic writer. I don't really plan very well, and he did become a huge part of the book. So I wrote him in for Archie, and so he was Archie. And then in 2 of my Mills and Boon special editions, because I wrote 3 books for Mills and Boon, I have a Hamish, who's my oldest, and a Lachlan. So I've used them.
Oh, you have, yeah. Tasman wonders if you find it easier to write rural romance or contemporary women's fiction.
Good question. I think I have, they're both, nothing is easy, I would say. I've got a little note on my wall that's my reminder, nothing worth doing is ever easy. And so, both have their hurdles and cons kind of thing, and hard parts, but also there's certain things about each of them which makes them easier, if that makes sense. So whenever I'm writing a rural romance, I wish I was writing a women's fiction. Right at the moment, I'm writing women's fiction, and I'm in that hard part at the end where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is actually going to work. And I've got the idea for my next rural romance, and I'm itching to write that and thinking, oh, it seems so much more straightforward. But then when I'm writing that, I'll be thinking, oh, this is so hard. Now, the reason I feel like in some ways, if I had to say one was easier than the other, although it really depends on the books, because this was definitely one of the hardest books I've ever had to write. And I wrote 65,000 words and tossed it out before I started again. So can
you tell us why it was one of the hardest?
So I wrote, it was because I think a couple of things. I wanted Liam. Liam was always going to be the main hero, but I didn't really have much of an idea about the story, apart from the fact that I wanted to set it at Christmas. I kind of always like if we talk about romance tropes or certain types of stories, like friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, fake relationships like this one. One of my favorites is sort of the one that got away kind of thing, someone who you kind of always had a thing for, but they ended up with someone else. So my very original idea was actually that one night, not too long before Christmas, the one that got away for Liam would walk into the pub. And I had the idea, they were both American, because he is American in this book. They were both American, and her husband was his best friend as they were growing up. But he died in the last year, and she decided she didn't want to be in Colorado for Christmas, and she was coming. So it was a totally different backstory for him. And they were such good friends. And he was friends with his, the dead. She was still really grieving. I just couldn't get it to work in my head. I was like, they're not going to get together. They're just going to, not in the time that would take for her to be on holiday anyway. So I was feeling anxious and gut-ridden about that. I wrote 30,000 words of that one, and then decided, it's not going to work. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to start again. And the second one was very similar to the beginning now. So this doesn't give it too many spoilers away. It's very early in the book for anyone who hasn't read. But Henry and Liam meet when she comes into the pub for a family. She meet some of her family and friends for sort of a harvest celebration dinner. She ends up getting very, very drunk and falls asleep in the pub, and he sort of takes care of her. That happened in my second version, but a different character. Now, my second character, I thought also then maybe my problem was that I had 2 Americans, and it's supposed to be a rural Australian romance, and so I was feeling a little bit unsure whether my readers would go for that. And so then I thought, I'm going to get a character, a different Australian character, and I've always wanted to write a librarian character. And so I decided to have someone come back to be the town sort of librarian, to work in the CRC. Probably didn't have a full-time librarian. I loved her. I called her Bridget after my favourite character, Bridget Jones. So I had to make her, exactly that age, because I said her mum had the age that Bridget would have been. So anyway, I made her the age when Bridget was published, if that makes sense, because I said that her mum was obsessed with reading and named her after Bridget Jones because she was reading that in hospital, and that cursed her, she thinks, because Bridget was bad with men. So she was a real fun character. Her brothers were named after heroes from books and stuff too. But it started, I realised, also in the first version that when I need to write a book, especially my rural romances, I think, a lot of people, diss romance and say that it's just light and fluffy and there's no backbone. But I feel like all of my rurals have dealt with, as well as the romance, they've dealt with some pretty serious issues. And I realised that for me to feel invested in writing about it, I need to feel that it's meaningful in some way. And so I decided that I wanted to write about rural men's mental health, because, that's a big issue in rural areas, as it is all over. And so I decided that Bridget was back in town because her brother was going through a really bad patch with his mental health.
Yeah.
But it actually began with his funeral. He had ended his life. And so she had a really great reason for being in the pub and getting drunk. Everyone else was at the wake. But that just wasn't working either. So for a number of reasons.
Yeah, that's really interesting then how much it so it really changed quite a lot.
It changed a lot. And so then I thought Henry, the other reason, you know, I had 2 Americans and then I had 2 people who were not working in rural jobs. You know, you can be a publican, you can be a librarian, anywhere.
So Henry wasn't even in the first ideas that you had
not at all. And then I thought, I need a story that's going to work. I was getting desperate about this time, but I also felt like I'm writing a rural romance. There's 2 parts that are important, the romance and the rural aspect. And so I felt like I needed to have one character at least that had a bit more of a rural occupation. Henry and her, she's an ag pilot, hence why I'm wearing
love you.
And that's where she came in.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how, when you're writing a series, how do you keep things fresh for both yourself and for your readers?
Well, it's really hard, and that's probably why I'm, you know, reluctant necessarily to, and because I think probably if I ever do it again, and that's why though people, you know, say they want more Bunyip Bay, if I had more time and I could write, I know I could write like 2 rural romances a year or something again, I would probably like to start a whole series afresh and learn from my mistakes, which would be to sort of get, not necessarily plan the whole series out, but to sort of, you know, maybe have a family or a group of friends or whatever that I knew I was going to write about, and then sort of give them each a plot. So, you know, I think with rural romance, when you asked earlier about what's easier or hard, or someone did, the rurals in some ways, I suppose, are easier because I do focus quite a lot on the romance. So years ago, I remember when rural romance was new and, you know, there's still a spectrum, but I always said that rural romance authors are on the spectrum somewhere. At one end, we have, you know, the books are all set in rural communities, but at one end, the romance is kind of more the focus, and at the other end, the sort of environmental issues and the farming stuff is more of the focus. I've always leaned towards the romance. I mean, that's where I started trying to write romance before I started to write rural romance. And so to me, that's the core. And therefore, with romances, a lot of authors, you know, will cringe if people say, oh, there's a formula for writing romance, but I would say it's more of a structure. And, you know, crime has a structure as well. If someone dies on the first page and you don't know who killed them by the end, you're annoyed. And in romance, you know, you meet these characters and you know they're going to end up together, but it's the journey that they go on. And so I have that journey kind of to hook my story on. So I know that certain things have to happen. So in that way, romance is easier. There's a lot of hurdles that come along the way and it doesn't always work out the way I hope, and that's where it gets hard. But yeah, so if I was going to do this again, I would keep more of a record and I would choose a specific trope. Like I've done friends to lovers in Outback Dreams, and then they're not as easy to identify in Blaze and Ghost, sisters. It's kind of mixed identity or whatever. Anyway, I can't think of it. But this one, it's definitely fake relationships. So I think you can use those. The thing with romance tropes that have been told in rom-coms and romances for years and years and years is that they have inherent conflict, which is what you need in a book. And so I think you use them to plot. I would do that better. I can't even remember if I answered the question properly. Sorry.
I think you did a pretty good job in answering the question.
Awesome.
You did say though as well that all the books that I've read of yours always sort of has an underlying sort of issue that it's dealing with, and that is that something that you're passionate about doing when you write? I
didn't even, it takes so long to work out my process and to learn about myself and my writing. I think this year has been a big, since writing this book actually, so towards the end of last year and this book year, I've really tried to examine my process and examine why I write. Previously to then, I kind of just, did it. And I know a few years ago, someone said to me, "Oh, you're an issue author," and I thought, and they were talking about the rurals. We bought Patterson Girls. Was it sorry?
No, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought, what? No, I'm not an issue author. Like when I think of issue author, I think of Jodie Picoult, you know? And then I realized, oh, okay, yeah, each of my rurals have had some quite serious issues or, you know, things you've dealt with. And I think possibly where that came from is that people that read rural romance, not all of them, and it's a thing that has grown so much in the last 10 years in Australia, and it's become, you know, a prominent genre. Some of those people have been reading romance all their lives, and then other people had a misconception about what romance is, and they picked up rural romance for one reason or another, didn't really realise, you know, they were reading romance novels, and now they do, and they're surprised because, you know, people think romance books are just light and fluffy.
Yeah.
But the majority of romance novels that I read, you know, just because they're light, enjoyable, and make you laugh, it doesn't mean they can't be important. And so I think everyone, you know, most romance authors write about issues. Most authors do. I rarely specifically choose an issue. That's not what comes first. It kind of, you know, grows as I write the characters.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Wendy has a good question. She wonders how you manage to keep the rising heroes from disturbing you while you're writing.
Oh, that's a good question, Wendy. And I think I know what you mean. So the future ones that you mean, kind of like while you're writing one. Actually, I prefer to have someone sort of, you know, badgering me and saying, it's my turn and my story. Because for the first probably 6 or 7 years when I was published, so I wrote for 15 years before then, but I'm talking about the time when I actually got published and I had contracts. For the first 5 or 6 years, I'd say, I would always be writing. I'm not one of those authors that have a million ideas, but I had pretty consistent ones and they'd come frequently. So I'd always be writing one book, and right smack bang in the middle, without fail, I would suddenly have this idea which I thought was amazing and wonderful for the next book. And that is frustrating because, as you say, like then you've got someone sort of knocking on your door saying, hey, it's my turn. Just don't worry about that book. Come and play with me. And, you know, you have to ignore those voices, otherwise you'd never finish a book. But that was kind of comforting because I always knew, hey, when I'm done this, it's okay, I know what I'm doing next. And in the last 2 years, that kind of went away, and it was more like I was thinking, geez, what if I never come up with another idea? So I prefer that, and I deal with it. Luckily, I've got it at the moment, so I know what my next rural romance, I've got to write a rural romance next, and I know what that is going to be about. I'm very excited about that one, actually. And although I'm very excited to write it, and I wish that I could almost write it now, I know I can't because I'm a contract. So I write a few notes down, you know, and I've already started my notebook. So if anything, you know, comes to me, I'll put it in there, but I don't allow myself to start writing. But it's a comfort because I think, oh, thank God, I've got another story in me.
Yeah. So does that mean you don't really get writer's block?
Oh, I definitely get writer's block. And it's interesting because, you know, a lot of writers this is a big argument. Does writer's block, is it actually a thing?
Yeah.
And I think until you've actually suffered writer's block, it's very easy to say, just do it, you know, just write anything, whatever. I think there's 2 types of writer's block, and I have suffered both. The first one is within a story where you're just stuck, you know, you thought you know where you were going, and then you get to a point and you don't know what happens next, and you just can't seem to work out what you should write next. That writer's block I've had pretty much for every book, and I think most writers I know do have something like that at least once in a book, if not more. Usually I know then that I've either gone down the wrong path, I've sort of written something that isn't right for the story, or I'm trying to force my characters to do something that they actually wouldn't do, because, you know, you've got to you create these people and they've got to act sort of realistically, not do something that would be out of character, and I'm trying to force them into a box. That happened specifically. One example is in Something to Talk About. I actually wanted that to be a fake relationship story, and it's got 2 characters. The heroine is quite feisty and strong, and I realised when I got to the point in the novel where he was going to offer to have a fake relationship for her, I read even up to there and I thought, oh no, I didn't swear. I thought she wouldn't say yes. This is not her personality. And then I was stuck for a few days because I thought, well, everything I had planned was hedging on them being, and then I finally realised that he could still ask her, she could say no, and that could sort of get a moment between them. And so things went from there, but it took me a few days and I was stuck before I realised I was trying to force them to do something else. So that's the first type of writer's block. The second one, someone else called it life. but I think it could be life. You know, you've got so much on in your life, you just can't have room for creativity, and you need to refill the well. I also think there's burnout, and you know, every writer I know suffers it in some form after, you know, a certain amount of time. I've, you know, and this year I think part of my problem with this book was that I'd hit a wall. I'd written too much. You know, well, everyone's different. Everyone can, you know, some people can write 100 books before that happens. Some people are only 2, you know, and I sort of really had to go, well, this is what I want to do, but I need to change some things in my life. And I did go and see someone about my anxiety and my doubt, because that was kind of my fear became so big that I couldn't write. So yeah, I think there is 2 types, and I'm happy to say I'm touch wood over it for now, but that's why I've really looked at how I write and looked at how writing fits into my world, and to try to be more kind to myself, because I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially when writing is a job and it has to pay the bills, and that, you know, that can kill the love, which is kind of what excites you and keeps you going.
How many is the most books you've had published in 1 year?
Well, I've had, for most of my published career, I've had 2 big books a year. So when I say that, it's like at least 100,000, more like 130 often. And for many of the years, I've also either written a novella in that year, like a digital novella, or a Mills and Boon novel, which is 55,000. So it's like writing 2.5 novels. And, you know, I have friends who write less. They write, you know, 1 book every 2 or 3 years. I have friends who write, you know, 10, 13 books a year. And I think the key is you really, and it's hard, especially in the era of social media where we all see what everyone else is doing, and you're like, oh my gosh, I barely wrote 200 words today, and so-and-so wrote 20,000. How is that possible? So I think the key is, really being kind and try not to compare yourself with other people, because we all write differently. Our processes, you know, come out in different ways, and you can't compare yourself with anyone else in the end.
Yeah. And what about the readers? Like, I know I've heard a lot of readers say, oh, that book was wonderful, but when's your next one coming?
Yeah. Well, that's the biggest compliment ever. You know, when someone's, you know, grabbed it on the first day, read it in 24 hours, and they're like, that's great. You know, when's the next one? And I think, you know, that, as I said, it's a big compliment, because you're like, well, that's great. If someone's, you know, done that, they must have enjoyed it. But it's also like, geez, why can't I write that fast? You know, like, why can't I write a little bit faster? Because, you know, the appetite is out there. And I think it's because I've got such passionate readers who are so great and communicate with me lots online, that, you know, I wish I could write faster, because I've got stories in my head that I would like to write, but I just seem to not be able to probably keep up the pace that I did years ago. I think it's also because now, you know, when I first started writing, Facebook was very new. Instagram wasn't a thing. Sorry, I mean, published, not start writing. And, you know, you didn't have to do all that sort of stuff. Also, when you're a relatively new writer, the admin side is quite low, you know, but the more you do, the more you have to do. I love doing events and festivals and things like that, but it takes time out if you're actually writing the book sort of time. So, yeah.
And after talking about all that, we do have questions from people asking what you are working on at the moment.
All right. Well, I'm working on a women's fiction at the moment, which will hopefully be out. There's only 1 book next year, sorry, folks. Hopefully, assuming this one's okay. I'm getting to the tail end of it. It's called The Work Wives. Jackie's actually helped me a little bit. I've got a payroll manager in my
I'm really excited for your new book.
Well, hopefully, and it's set in a chocolate company, not a factory, just the office. So there's not a lot of chocolate tasting, but a bit. And it's called The Work Wives, and it's about 2 women who work in this company, and, you know, they're totally different in every way, but they help each other out through the day. They're friends. They become really good friends at work. But the tagline is kind of, how well do you really know the people you work with? So what happens at the beginning is a guy comes to work at the company, a new director, and both of them have history with him. One not great and one good. And so then it's what happens after that.
No, it sounds very, very exciting.
Just have to finish it.
So that one should be out next year.
Yeah, about this time next year.
Yeah. Kim wonders if you've ever wanted to try any other genres.
Yeah, good question, Kim. I love all these questions. They're great. Yes, I would love to try 2 other genres. I would love to write a picture book. I did actually do a picture book course, but while I have titles for picture books, it's such a huge, massive craft, and I don't have the story, and I've tried, but maybe one day. I love picture books. I miss reading picture books with my kids. I still buy them for myself. And I'm a huge crime reader. Not so much psychological thrillers, but actual, your traditional sort of whodunit crime story. And so I wouldn't mind, I have had small elements of crime in Outback Blaze and Outback Ghosts. I really enjoyed that. I wouldn't mind having a little bit of more of a go at crime one day, but who knows if I will, because the good thing is I can read crime books and totally escape into them and just enjoy them for what they are. Whereas if I read in the romance genre or I read in the women's fiction genre, I'm constantly I can't switch off. And I'm reading it going, what? How did they do that? That's amazing. I can never do that. Or I'm reading it thinking, geez, how did this, so I can't be I can't completely relax when I'm reading that genre. So I think it's good to have genre that I won't dabble in, because that can be my fun genre.
Yeah. And if you did branch out to any other genres, do you think you would use a different name?
I don't know. It would depend on the genre, and it also would depend on the publisher, I guess, whether they, thought that was the right thing to do. I know, authors who have multiple names, and that's complicated. Even more so, I think, now, because of social media, and you have to have a website, you have to have Facebook,
and then you have to keep them all up to date.
Keeping up with one is hard enough as it is.
Exactly, And Tracy wonders, you said your next one after the women's contemporary one you're doing is going to be a new rural romance. Is that going to be part of a series or a standalone one?
It is a 3rd book, very loosely. As I said, I haven't started writing it, but I have pretty good idea of what I want to do. A 3rd book in the Talk of the Town, or the Talk series, I suppose. If anyone's got any idea for a talk title, because I had Talk of the Town and Something to Talk About. So if anyone has got another phrase with talk in, send it my way. But at the moment, I'm going with a working title called The Reinvention of Adeline Walsh. So anyone who's read those books will realise Adeline was not a very nice character in the 2 books. And my publisher wanted me to write her story. Lots of readers wanted me to write her story. Some said, no, I don't want her story. She's too awful. I've redeemed one character once. If I call my nasty nurse in my first book Jilted, I redeemed her in The Road to Hope. Never intended to. I wasn't sure I could, and I'm still not sure I could do it again. I had an idea, which I'm not going to say because it's a bit out there. But I'm really looking forward to that story, actually.
No, that sounds good. And how long is it ago since the second one in that series was published?
Early last year. March last year, I think, April
so
last year. So it will be, the thing is, though, if I'm writing one book a year, it will be 2023 when we see Adeline's story. The only good thing I can think is time seems to go so fast at the moment, so we'll be here before you know it.
Exactly. And Kel wonders if you've ever considered recording your own audiobook.
Oh, I would love to do that. There's 2, because I'm an English teacher, sort of, from years and years ago. I feel a bit of fraud saying it now. And I was also English and drama, so my minor is in drama. And so I love public speaking, and I would love to record an audio book. When I was reading books to my kids when they were little, I was always like pretending I was audio narrating the book. But saying that, my voice sounds absolutely terrible, so I think I'd need some training. And also I have a really good audio narrator now in Casey Withers, so I'm not sure,
I could imagine it would take quite a lot of time as well.
Yeah, it does, definitely as well. So I don't know. Probably not.
And Wendy wonders, like, you're obviously very, very busy. She wonders if you have any time to read for yourself, and if you do, what you like reading, and maybe if there's anything you've read lately you want to share to us.
I make the time to read. And I read a lot. Like this year, my Goodreads challenge, I said I want to read 45 books, and so far I've read 79. I'm reading my 80th. And I do that by probably not doing anywhere near as much housework as is necessary in our house. I don't watch huge amounts of TV. I watch some things with my family and stuff, or if I'm cooking dinner and that. But if I'm relaxing, which, I make time to relax. So I will read for an hour or so on the weekend when there's other things to do. I'll read when I get up in the morning on the weekends if I'm not going for a run, and just stay in bed for a little bit of reading. I read every night. I think it's, you can't be a writer without reading. And I actually listened to a podcast. I'm trying to think who it was with, a US author, I think, recently. And, a lot of authors will say they don't read books while they're writing, or they don't read within their genre because they don't want to take on, I am always writing a book and have been. So if I didn't read books while I was writing, I would never get the chance to read. And this other author said, really, I'm going to tip my tongue who it is. It's frustrating me. But, she said, I agreed with her that it's really important to read because reading stimulates me and inspires me. I don't feel that I steal other people's ideas even accidentally. But, often I'm reading a sentence in someone's book or a chapter, and I might be having a bit of a struggle with mine, and just something from that book will give me an idea about how, totally different, it's not the same, but will give me an idea about how to move forward in mine. And I think, the best way to learn writing is to read a huge amount, and to, you learn from amazing books, you learn from ones you don't like. And so, I make time to read. In terms of favourite books, I've had some really good ones this year. I feel a bit guilty because I haven't read enough Aussie fiction this year. I've had a bit of and I've got so many on my to-be-read pile, and I do love all my Aussie authors, but I've kind of stepped away a bit because most of the Aussie authors I kind of know. Yeah. And I just felt like, so that's possibly part of my year of kind of being kinder to myself. Often I was reading books because I felt like I should be reading them. And I kind of also, when I know someone, I take, it's sort of different to reading a book. So I've been listening to sort of books that are doing really well overseas, and I'm having a go of them. Or authors I love from overseas. So I'm a huge Ellen Hildebrand fan.
Oh, yes,
loved her latest one, Golden Girl. I've also read The Paper Palace recently, have you read that, Jackie?
No, I haven't.
So good. You should get her on. She's awesome. And that was just an amazing book. And I read that thinking, wow, if I could ever write a book like this, I would just be happy. And and I also love Friedrich Backman's Anxious People this year.
Yes, yeah.
And another really fun one was Colleen Oakley's The Invisible Husband of Frick Island, which was just really quirky and feel good. So, but I've got a whole lot of Aussie fiction that I need to get back to.
We have some people gave some suggestions for your talk series. Nola says Talking It Up, and Tasman has We Need to Talk.
We Need to Talk. That's a good one. Yeah. I'll write them down.
And I'm wondering what you like to snack on when you're writing. When you're writing.
I'll show you. I'm not a huge snacker while I write. I always drink Diet Coke. Oh my gosh, I've cleaned my desk is not clean. There's no. But at the moment, this is I have Darryl Lee Dark.
Oh, nice.
Chocolate. Sorry, wrong company. And I also, so I go through stages. So with mint Kit Kat a while ago.
The mint ones are my favourite.
Yes, so they're so good. So I can't I would eat, I can limit myself to just 3. That's my daily limit throughout the day. And it will take, I might have one in the morning, one while I'm writing in the middle of the day, and then in the afternoon, 3 pieces of this. But if I have a mint Kit Kat, it would, I would just eat it all.
Yeah. And have you found that writing your book about a chocolate head office and that has made you eat more chocolate?
No, it hasn't, I don't think. No. Maybe I already ate too much.
You're already a lover anyway.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's been really great chatting to us. Just wondering, do you want to let people know about your online presence? Like your book club is really, really great. I love your book club.
Oh, thank you. Ditto to you. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's just Racheal Johns Author, I think, and Facebook. I've got a Racheal Johns Facebook page. I've also delved into TikTok, but haven't done much. So if you're on there, you can find me there. I don't know how much more I'm going to do, but, dipping my toes in. And I have an online book club that I run with Anthea Hodgson, another author. We read one book a month, and it's just Racheal John's online book club, very similar to Jackie's. You know, no, and there's a lot of people in both, so no pressure.
Exactly, yeah.
But you know, we have fun chatting once a month about the book, and we do some questions and stuff for that. So yeah, if anyone wants to join, come on over.
Yep, no, that's great, and thanks for joining us again.
Thank you so much. It's always fun to talk to you.
Hope to talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
And thanks to everyone who joined in. We had some great questions. Bye.